The gun wasn't pointed at her, but Rebecca felt it anyway. Choi Kwang stood between her and the door, his 6'3" frame filling the doorway like a wall of muscle and expensive cologne. His jaw was set, dark eyes burning with something she couldn't name. Anger, maybe, or possession. "The debt is paid," Rebecca said, her voice steadier than her hands. "I did everything you asked. Your mother is awake. She's recovering. We're done here." "Done," the word came out soft, dangerous. He took one step forward and her heart slammed against her ribs. "Who said you could go, Rebecca?" 3 months. That's how long she'd been trapped in this gilded prison in the heart of Gangnam, caring for a woman she'd never met because her brother made the worst decision of his life. 3 months of living under Choi Kwang's roof, feeling his eyes on her every time she walked past, fighting the heat that crept up her spine whenever he said her name. 3 months of pretending she didn't notice how his shirt stretched across his shoulders, how his voice dropped when he spoke Korean, how he looked at her like she was simultaneously the answer to his prayers and the thing that would destroy him. "I'm saying it," she managed. "I'm leaving tonight." His hand shot out, gripping the doorframe beside her head. Not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off his body. "You think it's that
You think it's
simple?
that simple?
You think you can just walk
You
out
think
of
you
my
can just
life
walk out
because
of my
some
life
paperwork
because some
says you're
paperwork
free?"
says you're free?
That's exactly what I
That's
think.
exactly what I think.
Then you're not as smart as I thought you were. Before we dive into this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and tell me where you're watching from. The words hit like a slap. She'd spent the last 90 days proving herself to this man, to his family, to every suspicious pair of eyes in this compound. She'd brought his mother back from the edge of death, navigated the politics of a crime family she never asked to be part of, and somehow managed to keep her sanity intact. Well, mostly intact. "This was a business arrangement," she said, hatting how her voice wavered. "Your family paid my brother's gambling debt. I provided medical care. That's all this was." "Is it?" He leaned closer, and she pressed back against the wall. "Then why are your hands shaking? Why does your pulse jump every time I walk into the room? Why did you cry when my mother spoke your name for the first time?" "Because I care about my patients, all of them." Liar. The accusation hung between them, heavy and undeniable, because he was right. She was lying. This hadn't been just a job for weeks now. Maybe it never had been. "Kwang, 3 months ago you showed up at my door with murder in your eyes," he said, his voice dropping lower. "You looked at me like I was the devil himself. You fought me on everything, questioned every decision, made it clear you'd rather be anywhere else in the world than here." He paused. "But somewhere along the way that changed. Don't tell me you didn't feel it." She had felt it. God help her, she'd felt every second of it. The way the hatred had softened into understanding. How the fear had transformed into something infinitely more dangerous. The moment she'd stopped seeing him as her captor and started seeing him as just Kwang. Complicated, burdened, trying so hard to be the man his family needed while his mother lay dying. "It doesn't matter what I felt," she said. "The debt is paid. I'm free to go." "And if I don't want you to go?" "You don't get to decide that." His jaw clenched. "I could." "But you won't." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Because despite everything, you're not actually a monster. You let me choose." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. "And you're choosing to leave." It wasn't a question. She nodded, not trusting her voice. He stepped back suddenly, putting space between them. The loss of his proximity felt like a physical ache. "Fine, go, but first, you're going to hear what I have to say." "Kwang." "Sit down, Rebecca. 5 minutes, then I'll let you walk out that door." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she sat. 3 months earlier. The hospital administrator's face was carefully neutral when she called Rebecca into her office at Seoul National University Hospital. Dr. Rebecca Hart, American doctor, completing an international medical fellowship in emergency medicine. She knew that look. It was the same expression people wore when delivering bad news they didn't want to deliver. "Your brother is here," the administrator said. "He's asking for you." "Marcus," Rebecca's stomach dropped. "What did he do?" It's better if he explains. She found him in the waiting room, his face bruised, one arm in a sling. At 23, her baby brother looked like he'd been through a war. Maybe he had. Marcus. I messed up, Becca. His voice cracked. I messed up so bad. The story came out in broken pieces. Underground gambling dens in Gangnam. High-stakes poker with people who didn't accept excuses. Money he didn't have. Debts to the kind of people she saw in Korean crime dramas. The Choi family name whispered with fear across Seoul's underground. How much? She asked, her hands going numb. 50 million won. The number hit her like a freight train. Roughly $40,000. 50 million, Marcus, what were you thinking? I wasn't. I just kept thinking I could win it back, that one more hand. He stopped, collecting himself. They said I have a week. If I don't pay, they'll... He couldn't finish. She knew what they'd do. Everyone in Seoul knew what happened to people who owed money to the Choi family. They didn't mess around. They didn't give second chances. I'll figure something out, she said, even though she had no idea how. Her fellowship stipend barely covered her tiny apartment in Itaewon and student loans. She had maybe 4 million won in savings. 50 million might as well have been 50 billion. There's one other option. Marcus pulled out a sleek black business card with gold embossed Korean characters. They said if I couldn't pay, maybe you could. What does that mean? They need a doctor, a private case, some woman who's been in a coma for 6 months. They want someone to provide round-the-clock care, someone foreign who won't talk to the Korean authorities. I have a fellowship, I can't just... They said they'd forgive the debt, all of it, if you'd take the case. She stared at the card. Elegant, expensive, the kind that screamed old money and dangerous connections, just a phone number and a name in Hanja characters she couldn't read. I'll think about it, she lied. But they both knew she'd already decided. The Choi estate sat in the hills of Seongbukdong, one of Seoul's most exclusive neighborhoods. The kind of place where chaebols and politicians lived behind walls that made it clear ordinary people weren't welcome. Guards checked Rebecca's ID at 3 different points before finally letting her through the main gate. The house itself was stunning. Traditional Hanok architecture merged with modern luxury, curved tile roofs, wooden pillars, gardens that looked like they belonged in a historical drama, the kind of wealth that whispered instead of shouted. Choi Kwang was waiting in the courtyard. She'd seen his picture in the news. Choi Industries' heir, though everyone knew the family's real business had nothing to do with their legitimate corporate holdings. But photos didn't capture the reality of him. The way he commanded space, the intelligence in his dark eyes, the way his expensive suit couldn't quite hide the danger underneath. He was terrifying and magnetic in equal measure. Dr. Hart, his English was perfect, barely accented. Thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice. There's always a choice. He gestured toward the main house. Please, let me show you what we're asking. The medical suite was on the 2nd floor, overlooking a private garden with a small pond and carefully pruned bonsai trees. State-of-the-art equipment that must have cost millions. Monitors displaying vital signs. A hospital bed positioned to catch natural light. And in the bed, a woman who must have been beautiful before whatever happened to her. My mother, Kwang said quietly in Korean, then switched back to English. Choi Mina, she had a stroke 6 months ago. Massive brain hemorrhage. The doctors said she'd never wake up, that we should let her go peacefully. But you didn't. She's my mother. In Korean culture, filial duty isn't optional. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. I don't give up on family. Rebecca moved to the bedside, examining the monitors, the medication drip, the feeding tube. Someone had been providing excellent care. She's stable. For now, but our doctor is 75 years old. He can't be here 24 hours a day. Kwang's jaw tightened. We need someone young, skilled, someone who can give her the best possible chance, someone foreign who won't report to the Korean Medical Board or ask uncomfortable questions. And if she doesn't wake up, then at least I'll know we tried everything. He looked at her. Your brother's debt, 50 million won plus interest. I'll forgive all of it if you agree to stay here and care for my mother, full time, until either she wakes up or she doesn't. Yes. She should have said no, should have walked out right then and found another way to save Marcus. But she looked at the woman in the bed and thought about her own mother, who died when she was 16. How she'd have given anything for one more day with her. How long? She asked. As long as it takes. I need it in writing, the terms, when the debt is satisfied. What happens to my brother if I walk away? My lawyer will have contracts ready by tomorrow. He pulled out his phone. Do we have a deal, Dr. Hart? She looked at Choi Mina, at the machines keeping her alive, at the impossible situation she'd been forced into. Then she thought about Marcus, about his bruised face and broken voice. We have a deal. The first week was hell. Rebecca moved into the suite adjacent to Mina's room, unpacking her belongings while Kwang's people watched with obvious suspicion. The house staff was polite but distant, speaking Korean among themselves and switching to careful English only when addressing her. The family members who visited looked at her like she was a bomb waiting to explode. Only Kwang seemed comfortable with her presence. He showed up twice a day, morning and evening, to check on his mother. Sometimes he'd sit silently by her bed. Other times he'd talk to her in rapid Korean, his voice soft in a way that made Rebecca's chest ache. She liked orchids, he told her one evening, reverting to English. Before, she could spend hours in the greenhouse, said caring for them taught patience. Maybe you should bring her some, Rebecca suggested. Studies show coma patients respond to familiar smells. The next day, fresh orchids appeared in Mina's room. Kwang never mentioned it, but Rebecca caught him watching her arrange them with an expression she couldn't read. The breakthrough came 3 weeks in. Rebecca was adjusting Mina's position when her hand twitched, not an involuntary spasm. This was different, purposeful. She hit the call button immediately. Get Kwang SSI, now. He arrived within minutes, his shirt untucked like he'd been sleeping. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's right. Watch. Rebecca repeated the neurological test. Mina's hand moved again. Her eyelids fluttered. Iyama, Kwang's voice cracked. He moved to the bedside, taking her hand. Iyama, can you hear me? Her fingers squeezed his, weakly but unmistakably. Rebecca had seen a lot of medical miracles in her training, but nothing compared to watching Choi Kwang's face transform as his mother responded to his voice. The hardness melted away. The control shattered. He was just a son, terrified and hopeful, pleading with his mother to come back. She's fighting, Rebecca said softly. Her brain is healing. It's slow, but it's happening. Because of you, his eyes met hers. You've been doing something different. I've watched you. She had been more physical therapy, specialized medications, constant stimulation through music, touch, familiar voices, things that went beyond standard coma care. I'm doing my job. You're doing more than that. He stood, still holding his mother's hand. Whatever you need, equipment, consultations, anything, name it. I need you to trust me. I do. The words were simple, absolute. I trust you, Rebecca. Something shifted between them in that moment. The antagonism faded. The careful distance crumbled. They weren't captor and captive anymore. They were two people working toward the same impossible goal. And that's when everything got dangerous. Kwang started working from his mother's room. He'd set up his laptop at a small desk by the window, taking calls in Korean and English while Rebecca monitored vitals and adjusted medications. She tried not to listen to his conversations, but it was impossible not to hear. Business deals that sounded legitimate, references to shipments and territories that definitely weren't, names she recognized from news reports about organized crime in Seoul. Kwang managed it all with ruthless efficiency, his voice shifting between velvet and steel. You're starring, he said one afternoon, not looking up from his screen. I'm not starring, I'm observing. That's what starring is called when you're trying to be subtle about it. He closed his laptop. Questions? Too many. Try me. How do you do it? She gestured to the phone, to him, to everything. Manage all of this, the business, your mother, the weight of it. The same way you manage 30-hour shifts and impossible cases. You just do it because the alternative is failing, and failure isn't an option. But don't you ever want to just stop, walk away from all of it? His laugh was bitter. Every single day, but this is my family, my responsibility. I don't get to walk away just because it's hard. That sounds lonely. It is, he looked at her then, really looked, until recently. Her breath caught. Kwang. Don't tell me you don't feel it too. He stood, moving closer. I see the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching, the way your voice softens when we talk, the way you stayed up all night researching new treatments because you care about my mother almost as much as I do. I care about all my patients. Stop lying to yourself, Rebecca. We passed patient care 2 weeks ago. He was right. Somewhere between the late-night medication checks and the shared meals, between watching him read to his mother in Korean and seeing him handle family business with cold precision, she'd stopped hating him, started understanding him, maybe even started feeling something infinitely more complicated. This can't happen, she said. Why not? Because I'm here under coercion. Because you're you. Because the moment your mother wakes up, I'm gone. And if I asked you to stay? You won't. Try me. The air between them felt electric. He was close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, close enough to count the individual hairs of his perfectly styled cut, close enough to make a terrible decision. She stepped back. Your mother needs her medication adjusted. Excuse me. Rebecca fled to the medication room, her hands shaking as she measured out doses. This was insane. She was falling for a man who'd essentially bought her to save his mother. A man whose business involved things she didn't want to think about. A man who looked at her like she was precious and dangerous in equal measure. A man she couldn't have. When she returned, Kwang was gone, but a note sat on the desk in his bold handwriting in English. We need to talk. Tonight, garden 10 p.m. K. She should have ignored it. Should have stayed in her room and maintained every professional boundary that still existed between them. Instead, at 9:55 p.m., Rebecca found herself walking through the darkened house toward the gardens, past traditional Korean lanterns that lit the stone pathways. He was waiting by the koi pond, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The moonlight caught the sharp angles of his face, making him look like something carved from stone. You came, he said. I shouldn't have. But you did. That means something. It means I'm making bad decisions. Good. He set down his glass. I prefer you when you're not being perfectly logical and controlled. One of us has to be. Why? He moved closer. Why do we have to be logical about this? Why can't we just admit that something exists between us and see where it goes? Because it's not real, she said desperately. It's proximity. It's the intensity of the situation. It's Stockholm Syndrome or transference or it's just two people recognizing something worth fighting for. His hand came up, cupping her face gently. I've spent my entire life controlling everything around me, every decision calculated, every risk measured. But you, Rebecca, you're the one thing I can't control, the one thing I don't want to control. Kwang, tell me you don't feel it. Tell me it's all in my head and I'll never bring it up again. I'll let you walk out of here the second my mother wakes up without another word. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone. But tell me the truth. She couldn't, because the truth was that she did feel it, had been feeling it for weeks. Every time he smiled at something his mother did. Every time he defended her to his suspicious family members. Every time he looked at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't even asked yet. I feel it, she whispered. God help me, I feel it too. He kissed her then, and it was nothing like she'd imagined. There was no hesitation, no testing the waters, just certainty and heat and the taste of whiskey on his lips. His hands tangled in her hair and she pressed closer, years of loneliness and isolation melting away in his arms. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. This is crazy, she said. Completely. It won't work. Probably not. We should stop. We should. He kissed her again, slower this time, but I don't want to. Me neither. They stood there in the moonlight, wrapped around each other, pretending the rest of the world didn't exist. Pretending his business wasn't criminal. Pretending she wasn't here because of her brother's debt. Pretending they had a future beyond his mother's recovery. But eventually, reality crept back in. What happens when your mother wakes up? Rebecca asked. I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. Your family. We'll deal with it. You're under my protection now, Rebecca. No one touches you. No one threatens you. I give you my word. His word. The promise of a man whose business was built on violence and intimidation. She should have laughed at the absurdity of it. Instead, she kissed him again and tried not to think about what came next. Mina woke up 2 weeks later. Rebecca was checking her vitals when her eyes suddenly opened. Not the unfocused confusion of before. This was full consciousness, awareness. Nugyusayo, her voice was raspy from months of disuse. Who are you? My name is Rebecca. I'm your doctor. You've been in a coma, but you're awake now. You're safe. Kwang. I'll get him. Kwang arrived at a run, nearly crashing through the door. When he saw his mother's open eyes, his knees buckled. He caught himself on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down his face. Iyama, oh God, Iyama. Nay, a duel, my son, her hand lifted weakly, touching his face. Why are you crying? Because you're back, because I thought I'd lost you. Rebecca gave them privacy, stepping into the hallway with her heart hammering. She was awake. The debt was paid. Rebecca could leave. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt like she was suffocating. Dr. Kim, the elderly family physician, arrived within the hour. They conducted a full neurological assessment. Mina's cognitive function was remarkably intact. She'd need physical therapy to regain her strength, speech therapy to improve her articulation, but the prognosis was excellent. This is remarkable, Dr. Kim told Rebecca in English. I've been practicing medicine for 50 years. I've never seen a recovery like this from such a severe stroke. She had good care, Rebecca deflected. She had you. Kwang appeared in the doorway. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. Dr. Kim, could you give us a moment? When they were alone, Kwang closed the door. The debt is paid, he said. Rebecca's stomach dropped. Yes. You're free to go, back to your fellowship, your life, whatever you choose. Right, I'll pack tonight. Or you could stay. She stared at him. What? Stay, not as an employee. Not because of debt or obligation. Just stay because you want to. Kwang, I have a fellowship, a career. I can't just abandon everything. I'm not asking you to abandon anything. Finish your fellowship. I'll make arrangements with the hospital, but live here, with me, with us. He moved closer. These past 3 months, I've been happier than I've been in years, and it's because of you. That's the proximity talking, the intensity. Once I leave, you'll realize. I'll realize what? That I made a mistake falling for the woman who saved my mother's life. That I shouldn't have noticed how brilliant you are, how compassionate. How you fight me on everything, but you never gave up on Iyama even when the odds were impossible. This is insane. So you keep saying, but you haven't said no. Because she couldn't. Because despite every logical reason to walk away, despite the danger and the complications and the absolute insanity of it all, she didn't want to leave. What are you asking me? She whispered. I'm asking you to give us a chance. A real chance. No debt. No coercion, just you and me figuring out if this thing between us is real. And if it's not, then you leave with my blessing and enough recommendations to get you into any program you want. He paused. But if it is real, if we are something worth fighting for, then we figure out how to make it work. Together. Together, that word again. She thought about the past 3 months, the late-night conversations, the way he looked at his mother. The moments of vulnerability he'd shown only her. The way her heart jumped every time he walked into a room. This was insane, impossible. Every logical part of her brain screamed at her to run. But love wasn't logical. "I'll stay," she heard herself say. "But I have conditions. I finish my fellowship. I maintain my independence. You don't control me or dictate my life just because we're together." "I wouldn't want to control you. That fire is what I love about you." Love, the word hung between them like a promise. "You love me." "Desperately. Probably have since you told me I was making terrible medical decisions in my own house and didn't care that I could have you thrown out." She laughed despite herself. That was week one. "I know, you've been making my life difficult ever since." He cupped her face in his hands. "Stay, Rebecca. Let's see where this goes." She kissed him instead of answering, pouring 3 months of denied feelings into it. His arms came around her, holding her like he'd never let go. When they finally broke apart, he was smiling. Really smiling. Not the cold mask he showed the world, but genuine joy. "Is that a yes?" he asked. "It's a maybe. Ask me again tomorrow." "And the day after that?" "And the day after that," she grinned. "You might have to convince me." "I think I can manage that." "Present day." "That's what you need to understand," Kwang said, his voice bringing Rebecca back to the present, back to the doorway, the packed bags, the decision she'd thought she'd already made. "You can leave. The debt is paid. You're completely free, but you'd be walking away from something real, something worth fighting for." "How do you know it's real?" Rebecca asked. "How do you know it's not just the situation, the intensity, the proximity?" "Because I've spent 3 months watching you. I've seen you at 3 a.m. when you thought no one was looking, researching new treatments. I've seen you cry when my mother said your name. I've seen you stand up to men who terrify everyone else. And I've seen you look at me like I'm not a monster." He paused. "You see me, Rebecca, the real me. Not the heir, not the criminal, just me. And I see you too." "Kwang, I love you." The words were simple, absolute. "I'm in love with you, have been for weeks, maybe from the beginning. And I know it's complicated and impossible and probably insane, but I can't let you walk out that door without telling you the truth." Her hands were shaking. "This is crazy." "You keep saying that, but you're still here." He was right. She'd had a dozen opportunities to leave, to walk past him, to call Marcus to pick her up, to disappear back into her normal life. But she was still standing here, still caught in his gravity, still feeling her heart hammer every time he said her name. "What if I stay and it doesn't work?" she whispered. "What if we try this and it falls apart?" "Then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll have given it a chance." He moved closer. "But what if it does work? What if we are something real? What if you're the one person who can love me despite everything I am?" "I already do." The confession escaped before she could stop it. "I already love you. That's why this is so terrifying." His expression transformed. Hope, relief, joy. "Say it again." "I love you, Choi Kwang. I love you despite every logical reason not to. I love you even though you're impossible and controlling and you run a criminal empire. I love you." He kissed her then, deep and claiming, like he was marking her as his. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "Stay," he said against her lips. "Not because of debt or obligation. Stay because you love me, because I love you, because we are something worth fighting for." Rebecca looked at her packed bags, at the door that led to freedom and her old life, at the man who'd somehow become her entire world in just 3 months. The choice should have been obvious. "Ask me again," she said. "Rebecca Hart, will you stay with me? Will you build a life here? Will you let me love you the way you deserve to be loved?" She thought about Mina upstairs, recovering because she'd refused to give up on her. She thought about the late nights and early mornings, the conversations that had peeled away Kwang's armor layer by layer, the way he looked at her like she was precious and powerful in equal measure. She thought about love and logic and the impossible choices people made when their hearts got involved. "I'll stay," she said, "but I have conditions." He laughed, pulling her closer. "Name them." "I finish my fellowship. I maintain my independence. You don't get to control me just because we're together." "Deal." "And you have to tell me the truth. Always. No more secrets, no more hidden agendas. I can do that. And one more thing. Anything. You have to promise that if I ever want to leave, you'll let me go. No manipulation, no coercion, no using debt or obligation. Just let me go if that's what I need. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I promise, though I'm going to spend every day making sure you never want to leave. Good, she kissed him softly. Because I'm going to spend every day making sure you know exactly what you've gotten yourself into. I already know. I'm getting the woman who saved my mother's life. The woman who fights me on everything. The woman who sees past the violence and the power to the man underneath. He smiled. I'm getting you, Rebecca, and that's worth more than all the money and influence in the world. They stood there in the doorway, neither of them moving toward freedom or toward staying, just existing in this moment. This choice. This impossible, terrifying, beautiful choice. Finally, Kwang stepped back from the door, giving her space, letting her decide. Rebecca looked at her bags one last time. At the life she'd planned before debt and obligation had brought her here. At the future she'd imagined for herself. Then she looked at Kwang. At the man who'd coerced her into staying but given her the freedom to leave. The man who loved his mother enough to try the impossible. The man who looked at her like she was his salvation and his destruction in equal measure. Love or logic, freedom or choice, the old life or the new. In the end, it wasn't really a choice at all. She picked up her bags and walked through the doorway. But instead of heading to the car, she turned toward the stairs, toward her room, toward the life she'd started building here without even realizing it. Kwang caught her arm, his expression uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. Rebecca. I'm staying, she said, but I'm unpacking my bags in a better room. That guest suite has terrible lighting. His smile was brilliant. We have 12 bedrooms. Pick whichever one you want. I'm thinking the one next to yours might work. That can be arranged. He pulled her close, kissing her like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, she was laughing. This is insane, she said. You keep saying that. Because it's true, this is absolutely insane. But you're staying anyway. I'm staying anyway, she grinned. Someone has to make sure you don't make terrible medical decisions. Is that the only reason? No, she kissed him again. I'm also staying because I love you, because you see me, because somehow, against all odds, we found something real in this impossible situation. Something worth fighting for, he agreed. Something worth staying for. They walked back upstairs together, her bags in his hands, her heart finally at peace with the decision she'd made. The debt was paid. She was free. And she was choosing to stay. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, Rebecca stood in front of the mirror in traditional hanbok, the silk feeling strange against her skin. Red and gold, colors of celebration. Kwang had insisted on a traditional Korean ceremony first, before the Western one they'd have later for her family. Mina appeared in the doorway, walking with only a slight limp now, her recovery nothing short of miraculous. Beautiful, she said in careful English. My son is very lucky. I'm the lucky one, Rebecca replied in halting Korean. She'd been taking lessons. No, you saved my life, you saved his heart. Mina took her hands. You are family now, true family. Kwang appeared behind his mother, impossibly handsome in traditional hanbok of his own. His eyes widened when he saw Rebecca. You're not supposed to see me before the ceremony, she said. I don't care about superstitions. He crossed the room, pulling her close despite his mother's laughing protests. You look perfect. You don't look so bad yourself. He kissed her softly, ready to become Mrs. Choi. I'm keeping Hart professionally. I know, I wouldn't have it any other way, he grinned. Dr. Rebecca Hart Choi has a nice ring to it, though. Don't push your luck. I wouldn't dream of it. They walked to the ceremony together, breaking about a dozen traditional protocols, but Rebecca didn't care. This was their wedding, their choice, their impossible, beautiful life they were building together. Marcus was there with his girlfriend, sober now and working in it. Her fellowship supervisor had come, along with colleagues from the hospital who still couldn't quite believe she was marrying into the Choi family. Kwang's associates filled the other side, dangerous men in expensive suits who'd learned to respect her over the past months. Two worlds colliding, somehow making it work. The ceremony was beautiful. Traditional bows and silk ribbons and promises made in 2 languages. When it was over, when Kwang kissed her in front of everyone, Rebecca felt something click into place. This was home, not Seoul or America, not a house or a country, but this man, this family, this choice she'd made to stay. Later, at the reception, Kwang pulled her onto the dance floor despite her protests that she didn't know how. "Just follow my lead," he murmured. "I never follow anyone's lead." "I know, that's what I love about you." They swayed together, ignoring the traditional music, making up their own rhythm. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Staying, giving up the life you planned?" Rebecca looked up at him, at the man who'd started as her captor and become her partner, her equal, her home. "I didn't give up anything," she said. "I chose something better. I chose you. Even knowing what I am, what I do. Especially knowing that, because you trusted me enough to show me the real you, the son who loves his mother, the man who keeps his promises, the person who sees me as an equal, not a possession." He kissed her softly. "I love you, Dr. Hart." "I love you too, Mr. Choi." They stayed on the dance floor long after the song ended, wrapped in each other, building their impossible future one moment at a time. The debt was paid, Rebecca was free, and she'd chosen to stay. Not because she had to, not because of obligation or coercion, but because love, real love, was worth every risk, every complication, every impossible choice. And this love, their love, was worth staying for. Thanks for reading. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. Comment below and let me know what you thought about Rebecca and Kwang's journey. Would you have stayed or left? And tell me what kind of story you want to see next. Until next time, keep believing in impossible love stories.